But do you get a sense that they are close to doing something?
I think they're close to starting to spin it aggressively as they're winning. That's what I think is close because
in other words, the appearance of doing
right, and I think both sides can do that because
probably matters.
Look, economists can't agree on what winning a trade war looks like, I don't think, other than we should have totally free markets in some sort of textbook fantasy. I think the consumer doesn't know. I think the consumer, they're going to see some pain on consumer products, which is the next wave of tariffs, where the end products that you buy, not just like aluminum and steel, but like these gadgets you like or stuff you get at Walmart off the shelves. And I think some will be mad, but I think who's going to spin that as a negative? You have Democrats going to take China's side. It's going to look like, oh, poor Chinese companies can't sell stuff cheap now to America. So I think Trump is very good at look, I think he made North Korea look like a win. I think he can make this look like a win, even though, is it a win? It's not a win. I think right now the only real measure is whose stock market falls the most is the loser. And right now, to the point of that, I guess, for some reason, we're up and China's down. So at this stage, you have to say our companies are winning. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to fall if we don't get any improvement here, but we'll still fall less, and then Trump's going to say we're winning. And I think
well, wasn't that the way he cobbled together the South Korean Accord? It wasn't great, but, hey, it was different than what we had, and they moved on. In other words, you can claim victory without it being a huge victory, but it's different than what it was.
And I think what Trump wants here is some progress on intellectual property rights with China, some greater protections for U.S. companies so they don't have to surrender their know-how in order to gain access.
But how do we hold them accountable? They lie and cheat a lot.
Well, if they claim that they've agreed to...
They claim that they don't even do that.
Well, in this, they're going to have to go ahead and admit to their faults and say that moving forward, they're going to be less demanding as far as getting know-how from American companies so that the companies can gain access to their markets. That would be a victory for Trump, and it may not be that costly for China.
But then the proof would be in the pudding and whether they make good on that. And enough time might slide before we see the Chinese cheating on a commitment like that, but it doesn't matter before the midterms. What do you think?
Right. That's why, gaining control of the narrative is so important to this White House. I mean, you do have his base of supporters who are very much with him. He's still very popular among Republicans, even when he makes these kinds of moves that are against what Republicans have stood for in terms of trade, raising more uncertainty in a time that Republicans are feeling good about the economy. That leaves a big question mark.
They're very afraid, you're right, to take him on. It's Scott Walker, Wisconsin here. No fan of the way the president has been targeting Harley-Davidson and even advocating boycotting them. But he says, well, we hope this all works out.
There's a certain amount of trust that the president has with his base. So you're hearing from people in Tennessee, Wisconsin, other places where they don't like some of these, tariffs and retaliatory possible measures that they would react to negatively with anybody else. But with this president,
well,
they have a little
said, and John, you repeated this before, they've learned to. We get nervous about this stuff, but it works out for us. So we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
And what's especially important about this week's negotiations is if we show signs of progress, perhaps that also implies that progress will be made regarding negotiations concerning NAFTA as well as with our European trading partners. And those are, that has many people in the Rust Belt nervous, though. You're talking about Harley-Davidson and the like.
But you know what I think is going to happen before any of this? We'll get a Mexico Accord, a NAFTA Accord with Mexico, before any of this. Now, I wonder how that would change things. I know there's certainly a pressure it's putting on Canada, but would it add pressure to China or what?
Well, that was sort of the point of TPP, was to do deals without China to marginalize China. And although Trump would rather do essentially that one-on-one with countries where it's just him facing off with one other country doing deals, art of the deal guy. And it would look like China's being left out of the global trade game, which they need to be a little bit left out of the. Look, they're not going to come out and say, the espionage and the identity and the IP theft that we're not doing, we're going to stop doing that if you don't do the tariffs.
I do wonder. I was being quasi-facetious with John about it, but how do you go and address this problem without having to first admit, you got us dead center. We're cheating, thieving liars.
That's why it's hard to win, because they're not going to admit to the stuff they did.
But the U.S. companies agreed to go ahead and hand over the secrets, their production trade secrets, whatever it might be.
And to do business there. That was good. And by the way, Apple just proved this again by saying, these 25,000 apps that were ticking off the Chinese government they're going to disappear. We're not going to have them. So we still kowtow to the Chinese, right?
Yeah, well, what's interesting, too, is that this president has made a lot of these, unilateral trade deals. We just haven't really seen them in effect yet, right? So pulling away from
Well,
the
there's only
TPP
unilateral one, to be fair, by that definition, with South Korea. Only one. The
But in
European
pulling-
one was in mass and promises on soybeans and something like that, what countries can't do, because countries don't buy the soybeans.
But
individual.
in pulling out of TPP,
Right.
it didn't really.
But
do
that's his
what
track
he said.
record, 1-0 with South Korea. I'm not minimizing it, but it gets me back to my argument. Is that what he's after? Something that can look like, we didn't have this before, now we do. It's not across the board, but it's a step.
Trade is becoming fairer. He could go ahead and make that
Right,
statement with
right.
confidence. That's what he wants to do. The only
And
problem
did
with
we
that,
have
though,
this before?
Yeah.
Did we have these transactions done this way before? No.
Yeah, and he's showing some action, putting some energy into this, where in the past it was ignored, it was hidden from the American people.
Yeah.
They might appreciate that politically. However, I think the benefits from many new trade agreements are not going to be easy to notice immediately, and thus they may not be much of political benefit come the
Well,
midterm
but the flip
elections.
side of that, I was raising a kid, I don't know how you feel, Jonas, is that nor are the problems or the shallowness of a potential sham of a trade deal. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if it isn't great, you really wouldn't know that until well after the midterms, by which time Republicans potentially could capitalize on it.
Right. The more we're into this, the more I realize that this is Trump's trade war to play, because he can sell it however he wants to sell it. And it's not going to be very obvious. It's going to be very unlikely that it's obviously a failure, or it's just a complete crash and the economy goes in the toilet and the market's down 40%. That's probably not going to happen. And unless that happens, it can be sold.
And markets would celebrate the uncertainty going away. That
Definitely.
this pall and this cloud is gone. Right?
Stronger equity market, more jobs, more capital spending, without a doubt.
What would the political ramifications be?
For a trade war?
Well, for resolving this, or at least having what looks like a Pyrrhic victory, if that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering how much of this is already baked in terms of how people know that how Trump operates, right? So there is this
And that's
anxiety.
why they've been up ahead of this through this, for the most part.
Right, exactly. And that's why his numbers are relatively stable, even though they're low nationally, they're high among Republicans, and they're relatively stable throughout his presidency, plus or minus here and there. And so I think this kind of uncertainty is baked in to some extent.
We should say right after the midterms is the big APEC summit where the president will be meeting with Xi Jinping, right? You would assume by then they want something, right? Or no?
Definitely. I think that would look great. But again, it's not going to help you out in the midterms, not at all. And they're perhaps also concerned about the situation still with North Korea. They'll be thinking about that.
Yeah.
Trump's winning when he seems like he's being a bully, and no one is really going to take China's side. The only time he really stumbled was when he didn't look like a bully with Putin in that summit. I think when he's acting like a tough guy who pushing people around that we've always acted overly, globalist with, I think a lot of people like to see that, whether it makes economic sense for the market.
But he's never a tough guy to their faces.
No, and then he caves a lot, and then he's like, oh, he wasn't. Did he seem that tough with North Korea at the end?
See, like when you step out of the studio, I'm going to trash everything.
I know.
But to your face, hey, good job.
No, I wouldn't do that.
John? I would do that, no. All right, we'll see what happens here because we don't know.